It was July 2023 when our third child, a beautiful, healthy baby, entered the world. Everything felt like it had finally fallen into place. My wife, Emily, and I were in sync, basking in the chaos and joy of having 3 kids. Life was busy, sure, but it was also complete. For a while, I thought, this is it. This is happiness. Then came December, and with it, a scare I wasn't prepared for. Emily was hospitalized with sepsis. For days, I hovered between panic and hope, terrified that our perfect life could be ripped away in an instant. But she pulled through. Emily is strong like that. Always has been. We celebrated her recovery quietly, thankful that the nightmare had passed, and I buried the fear that lingered in the back of my mind. By the time summer of 2024 rolled around, things had settled. Emily was thriving in her role as a personal trainer, and I had just secured a new job. On the surface, everything seemed normal. But looking back now, I can see the cracks had already started to form. It was late June when Emily sat me down after the kids were asleep. Her voice was calm but serious. "I need to talk to you about something," she said. My stomach clenched. Those words rarely herald good news. She told me she had always admired women but had recently realized she was definitely bisexual. "I love you," she added quickly, as if trying to preempt any insecurities. "Nothing about us has to change." I tried to be supportive. I told her it didn't bother me, that it didn't change how I felt about her. But the truth? It rattled me. Not because she was bisexual. I wanted her to feel free to be herself, but because it felt like a tectonic shift in our relationship. I pushed the discomfort aside, telling myself it was just an adjustment period. Around the same time, Emily struck up a friendship with a mom from our kids' school, a woman named Stacey. Stacey was openly gay, in a long-term relationship, and raising 2 young kids of her own. Emily told me they bonded over their shared love of running and fitness, and soon, they were training together regularly. At first, I thought nothing of it. Emily's job meant she often worked closely with clients, and Stacey seemed nice enough when I met her briefly during a school event. Then came September 22nd, a girls' weekend Emily had been planning for months. She came home from it a mess, tears streaming down her face as she apologized over and over. "I'm so sorry," she said, clutching my hands. "I got drunk, and I told Stacey I was bisexual. I told her she was my type." I was stunned, unsure how to process what she was telling me. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She admitted they had exchanged flirty messages, but insisted it hadn't gone further than that. She begged me not to leave her, swearing she loved me and our family. And I believed her. Maybe it was because I wanted to believe her, or maybe it was because I didn't know how to react with so much else on my plate. I was starting a new job the next day and needed to keep it together. So, I forgave her. But the doubts started to creep in. Emily and Stacey continued their friendship, which now felt like a ticking time bomb. I didn't want to be the kind of husband who dictated who his wife could or couldn't see. I told myself I was doing the right thing, supporting her, respecting her need to explore this part of herself. Yet every time they met up, I couldn't shake the pit in my stomach. And then, it happened. Late October, Stacey left her partner and kids. Emily swore to me they hadn't slept together, that it was all innocent, but a mutual friend of theirs later hinted otherwise. The timelines didn't add up, and my trust in Emily began to erode. We started couples therapy, desperate to salvage what we had. Emily insisted she wanted to be with me and claimed Stacey was just helping her understand her feelings about women. She described it as a journey of self-discovery, one she needed to take. Meanwhile, I was spiraling. My emotions swung wildly between anger, sadness, and a faint hope that we could fix this. And then there was the sex. It became a strange kind of anchor. Emily would initiate intimacy during our worst moments, as if trying to pull me back into her orbit. And it worked. For a while, anyway. By November, things felt more fragile than ever. I threw myself into planning Emily's birthday, desperate to remind her, and maybe myself, of everything we had. I spent more money than I should have, arranging gifts and a special dinner. She smiled and thanked me, but her attention seemed elsewhere. The next day, while I was out of town for work, she spent her birthday with Stacey. Later, I found out they had spent the entire day together, holding hands in public like a couple. Emily downplayed it, saying it was nothing more than friendly affection, but my gut told me otherwise. The weekend after, I found myself holding her phone, staring at messages from Stacey. They weren't explicit, but the sentiment was unmistakable. Declarations of love, plans for the future. Emily didn't even try to deny it when I confronted her. Instead, she admitted she had feelings for Stacey and that she was torn between us. For the first time, I truly felt like I was losing her. After that weekend, everything between Emily and me began to crumble. I tried to hold on, but it felt like I was grasping at smoke. She was pulling away, and I could feel it in every interaction, every glance, every conversation that felt more like an obligation than a connection. The week after I found those texts, Emily dropped the bombshell. She came into the kitchen one evening after the kids were asleep, her face pale but determined. "I can't keep pretending," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to be honest with you. I want to be with Stacey." For a moment, I didn't react. It was like my brain needed time to process the words, to absorb their meaning. When it finally hit, a tidal wave of emotions surged through me: anger, disbelief, betrayal. I asked her how she could throw away everything we'd built, how she could look me in the eyes and say she loved me while planning a future with someone else. "I do love you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, and I'm still attracted to you. But this is something I have to explore. It's who I am." Her words felt like a slap. Who I am? What about the person she'd been for the past 10 years? The wife, the mother of my children, the woman who vowed to grow old with me? I felt like I didn't know her anymore, like the person standing in front of me was a stranger wearing my wife's face. I asked her if she had slept with Stacey, if this was really about exploring, or if she was just leaving me for someone else. She hesitated for a moment too long before saying no, and in that pause, I felt my remaining trust in her shatter. Still, I tried to keep it together for the kids. I didn't want them to sense the tension or see the cracks forming in their parents' marriage. I started sleeping in the guest room, but even that felt like a temporary band-aid on a gaping wound. Couples therapy, which had felt like a lifeline a few weeks earlier, quickly became an exercise in futility. Emily insisted she wanted to navigate this together, to figure out how we could make things work while she explored her feelings for Stacey. But every session felt like a scripted performance. She'd assure the therapist she was committed to our marriage, only to come home and spend hours texting Stacey or disappearing to meet a friend. During one particularly heated session, I finally snapped. "You keep saying you want to work on this, but your actions tell a completely different story. How am I supposed to believe anything you say when you're running off to Stacey every chance you get?" Emily looked at me, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance. "I don't want to lose you," she said, "but I don't want to lie to myself either. I can't turn off how I feel." Her words felt like a knife to the chest. I realized then that she wasn't fighting for us. She was fighting for the freedom to have her cake and eat it too. And I was letting her. Stacey was becoming an increasingly visible presence in our lives. Emily would casually mention her during conversations, slipping her name into stories about school pickups or gym sessions. I tried to convince myself that it didn't matter, that I could ignore it. But the truth was, it was driving me insane. One Friday night, Emily told me she was going to Stacey's house for a movie night. She promised it was nothing more than a friendly hangout, but I couldn't shake the image of them together, laughing, touching, sharing secrets that should have been ours. I begged her not to go, telling her it felt like she was choosing Stacey over our family. "Don't do this," she said, her voice sharp. "You're making it harder than it has to be." Harder for who? I wanted to scream. Instead, I let her walk out the door. The house felt impossibly quiet that night. I sat in the living room, staring blankly at the TV while the kids slept upstairs. My mind was a mess of spiraling thoughts. Was she with Stacey now? Was this the night they'd finally crossed the line? Had they already? By the time she came home hours later, I was too exhausted to confront her. A week later, Emily and I had the conversation that finally broke me. It was late, and we were sitting in the living room, the tension between us palpable. I told her I couldn't keep living like this, that the uncertainty and the constant push and pull were tearing me apart. "I don't want to hurt you," she said softly, avoiding my eyes. But I think I want to be with Stacey more than I want to be with you. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had suspected it, of course, but hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. She went on to say how much she admired me, how amazing I was as a husband and father, but this was something she had to do. She called it finding herself, as if that was supposed to make it easier for me to accept. I sat there, numb, as she explained her plan to figure out living arrangements and how we'd split custody of the kids. My mind raced with questions. How did we get here? Could I have done something differently? Was this my fault? But the one thought that loomed over everything else was this: it's over. The next few weeks were a blur of arguments, logistical discussions, and tearful goodbyes. We tried to keep things civil for the sake of the kids, but the bitterness between us was impossible to ignore. Every time I saw her texting Stacey or heard her mention her name, it felt like salt in an open wound. I moved into the guest room full-time, and Emily started spending more nights away from home. She claimed it was to give us space, but we both knew where she was really going. By the end of November, she had essentially transitioned into a relationship with Stacey, though she still insisted they hadn't slept together. At that point, I didn't care anymore. The emotional betrayal was enough. By December, the reality of my situation had fully set in. Emily and I were no longer partners in any meaningful sense of the word. She was physically present but emotionally gone, tethered to Stacey in a way that made it impossible for us to rebuild what we once had. The house felt heavier with her around than when she was gone, and every interaction between us was tinged with awkwardness or resentment. I didn't want to fight in front of the kids. They deserved better than that. But the strain between us was impossible to ignore, even for them. Our oldest, Nathan, started asking questions. Why was Mommy spending so much time with her friend? Why wasn't Daddy sleeping in their room anymore? I tried to shield them from the truth, but I could tell they sensed something was wrong. Emily and I decided to sit down and discuss logistics one night after the kids were in bed. We talked about living arrangements, how to divide our time with the kids, and how to present the situation to them. Every part of the conversation felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. I think it's best if I move out, Emily said, her tone calm and almost detached. At least for now. It'll give us both space to adjust. Adjust to what? I asked, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to stay composed. The fact that you've decided to blow up our family for someone you've known for 5 minutes? Her expression hardened. This isn't just about Stacey. This is about me figuring out who I am. I can't do that while I'm here, pretending to be something I'm not. The words stung, not just because of their implication, but because they were delivered so coldly. For a moment, I wanted to argue, to beg her to reconsider. But what was the point? She had already made up her mind. The next day, Emily and I sat the kids down to explain what was happening. We kept it vague, saying that Mommy and Daddy would be living in different houses for a while, but that we both loved them very much. Nathan looked confused and hurt, while our middle child, Mia, just sat silently, holding onto her stuffed bunny. The baby, of course, was too young to understand. Are you getting a divorce? Nathan finally asked, his voice trembling. Emily glanced at me, as if asking for permission to answer. We don't know yet, she said, but no matter what happens, we'll always be your parents. That will never change. Nathan nodded, but I could see the tears welling up in his eyes. It broke something inside me to see my son, so young, so innocent, forced to grapple with the fallout of our choices. I wanted to tell him everything, to explain how it wasn't my fault, how I had fought to keep our family together. But what good would that do? By mid-December, Emily had found a small apartment a few miles away. The day she packed her things was one of the hardest of my life. Watching her go through our home, deciding what to take and what to leave behind, felt like a death by 1,000 cuts. Every item she packed was a reminder of the life we'd built together, the life she was now walking away from. When the moving van pulled up, I helped her load the boxes, even though it felt like I was assisting in my own demise. At one point, as we carried a box of photo albums to the truck, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. I never wanted it to end like this, she said. Then why are you letting it? I asked, my voice breaking. She didn't answer. The weeks that followed were some of the darkest of my life. The house, once filled with the chaos of family life, now felt eerily quiet. I stayed busy with the kids, trying to keep some semblance of normalcy for their sake, but every night after they went to bed, the loneliness hit me like a freight train. Emily would come by to see the kids, sometimes staying for dinner or helping with bedtime. At first, I tried to be cordial, but it was impossible to ignore the bitterness that bubbled beneath the surface. Every time I saw her, I was reminded of what she had taken from me: our marriage, our family, our future. The most painful moments were the ones where she seemed genuinely happy. She would talk about her new apartment, her new routine, and, of course, Stacey. Even when she tried to avoid mentioning her, Stacey's presence loomed over every conversation. It was clear that Emily was thriving in her new life, while I was barely keeping it together. By January, I realized I was mourning more than just my marriage. I was mourning the version of my life that I thought I'd have. I had always pictured growing old with Emily, watching our kids grow up together, building a life full of shared memories and milestones. Now, that vision was gone, replaced by an uncertain and fragmented reality. I started therapy around this time, desperate for some kind of clarity. My therapist helped me unpack the whirlwind of emotions I was feeling: anger, sadness, guilt, and even relief. She told me it was normal to grieve, that I needed to allow myself to feel the loss fully before I could begin to heal. But healing felt impossible when every day brought a new reminder of what I'd lost. I'd see a happy couple at the park with their kids and feel a pang of jealousy. I'd hear one of the kids ask when mommy was coming home and have to fight back tears. Every corner of the house seemed to hold a memory of Emily: her favorite mug in the cabinet, the spot on the couch where she used to sit, the photo of us on our wedding day that I still couldn't bring myself to take down. Through it all, one question haunted me more than any other. Could I have done something differently? I replayed every moment of our relationship in my head, searching for the missteps, the missed opportunities to fix what was broken before it was too late. Was I too focused on work? Did I take her for granted? Should I have been more supportive when she first opened up about her sexuality? The worst part was knowing I might never get answers. Emily insisted this wasn't about me, that it was about her and her journey of self-discovery. But how could I not take it personally? How could I not feel like I had failed as a husband and partner? The boiling point came one Friday evening when Emily came by to drop off the kids. As she stood in the doorway, I noticed she seemed hesitant, as if something was weighing on her. "What is it?" I asked, crossing my arms. She sighed. "I need to tell you something before you hear it from someone else." I braced myself. "Okay. Stacey and we've decided to move in together." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. I felt my chest tighten, the familiar wave of anger and heartbreak crashing over me. "Seriously?" I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "It's been, what, a few months? And you're already playing house with her?" Emily flinched but held her ground. "I know it seems fast, but this feels right for us. The kids like her, and the kids like her because you've forced her into their lives." I snapped, unable to hold back any longer. "Have you even stopped to think about how all of this is affecting them? Or me?" Her expression softened, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. "I'm not trying to replace you," she said quietly. "Stacey isn't trying to replace you. But this is my life now, and I need to live it authentically." "Authentically," I repeated bitterly. "Is that what you call abandoning your family for someone else? Authenticity?" She didn't respond right away, and the silence was deafening. Finally, she said, "I never meant to hurt you. I wish things could have been different." After Emily left, I spent hours replaying the conversation in my head. Her words echoed endlessly. "This is my life now. I never meant to hurt you." I knew she believed what she was saying, but it felt like a hollow excuse. In therapy, I talked through my anger, my sense of betrayal, and the overwhelming feeling of being replaced. My therapist encouraged me to focus on what I could control, my own healing and my relationship with the kids, but it was hard to let go of the bitterness. I couldn't help but wonder, had Stacey been in the picture long before Emily admitted it? Had their emotional affair started months earlier than I realized? Every time I thought I had a grasp on the truth, Another revelation would surface to shatter my fragile sense of understanding. As much as I tried to shield the kids from the complexities of the situation, they were perceptive in ways I hadn't expected. One night, as I was tucking Nathan into bed, he asked, "Do you hate Stacey?" The question caught me off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you always look mad when someone says her name," he said. I sat on the edge of his bed, taking a deep breath. "I don't hate Stacey," I said carefully, "but I'm still upset about some things that have happened. It's okay to feel upset sometimes, just like it's okay for you to like Stacey if she's nice to you." Nathan seemed to accept that answer, but it left me feeling conflicted. I didn't want to influence how the kids saw Stacey, but I also didn't want to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. The final straw came during another co-parenting discussion. We were at a coffee shop, neutral ground to discuss schedules. Things were going smoothly until Emily suddenly said, "There's something I need to tell you." I set down my coffee, already dreading what was coming. "Remember when I said Stacey and I didn't cross any lines until after I moved out?" she began. I nodded cautiously. "I wasn't entirely honest," she admitted, looking down at her hands. "We kissed before I left. A couple of times." The room seemed to tilt. "You lied," I said flatly. "I didn't want to make things worse," she said, her voice barely audible. "I thought it would just hurt you more." "It's not about sparing me," I shot back. "It's about you being honest, about not rewriting the timeline to make yourself feel better. How am I supposed to trust anything you say now?" Emily didn't have an answer, and for the first time, I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. But it didn't matter anymore. Whatever fragile hope I had been clinging to, that maybe she regretted her choices, that maybe there was a way back, crumbled in that moment. After that conversation, I made a decision. I couldn't keep holding on to the hope that Emily would change her mind or take responsibility for the pain she had caused. I needed to let go, not for her sake, but for mine. The bitterness didn't disappear overnight, and the road to acceptance was far from smooth. But something shifted in me that day. I realized that I couldn't move forward if I kept looking back. The decision to officially end the marriage wasn't a sudden one. It was the inevitable conclusion to months of pain, miscommunication, and betrayal. By January, Emily and I both knew there was no salvaging what we had. The constant strain of trying to navigate our new reality as separated parents was exhausting, and the finality of divorce began to feel like the only path forward. It was Emily who brought it up first. We were sitting at the dining table after the kids were asleep, going over the upcoming schedule for drop-offs and extracurriculars. Without preamble, she looked up from the calendar and said, "I think it's time we talk about divorce." I'd like to say I was prepared, but the truth is, hearing those words hit like a punch to the gut. Still, I nodded, pretending to be calm. "Yeah," I said quietly, "I think you're right." From there, things moved quickly. Emily wanted an amicable split, and I agreed. For the kids' sake, if nothing else. We decided to use a mediator to avoid a drawn-out legal battle, which was the only thing we agreed on without argument. The process itself was clinical and impersonal. Dividing assets, sorting through finances, and drafting a custody agreement felt more like dissolving a business partnership than ending a marriage. The mediator would ask questions like, "Who will take primary custody during school weeks?" Or, "How do you want to handle holidays?" And Emily and I would respond with carefully measured answers. Inside, though, I was seething. Every time she smiled politely or spoke about co-parenting effectively, I wanted to scream. How could she act so composed while I was barely holding it together? The hardest part of the entire process was discussing custody. We both wanted what was best for the kids, but agreeing on what that looked like wasn't easy. Emily wanted primary custody, arguing that her work schedule as a personal trainer gave her more flexibility. I pushed back, unwilling to accept anything that made me feel like a visitor in my own children's lives. Just because I work full-time doesn't mean I can't be there for them, I argued during one of our mediation sessions. "I'm not saying that," Emily countered, her tone infuriatingly calm. "But they need stability, and they're used to being with me more often." Her words stung, but I knew she wasn't entirely wrong. As much as I hated to admit it, Emily had always been the one to handle the day-to-day chaos of parenting. Still, the thought of losing time with my kids felt unbearable. In the end, we agreed on a joint custody arrangement. Emily would have them during the school week, and I'd have them every other weekend and half of the holidays. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best I could get without turning the divorce into a full-blown war. The day I signed the divorce papers felt surreal. I sat in the mediator's office, pen in hand, staring at the stack of documents in front of me. Each page was a reminder of everything I had lost. Our marriage, our family, our future. Emily was there too, sitting across the table. She looked composed, almost relieved, while I felt like I was signing away a part of my soul. When it was over, the mediator shook our hands and congratulated us on handling the process so maturely. It was the most hollow compliment I had ever received. As we left the office, Emily turned to me and said, "I'm sorry it had to end like this." I wanted to respond, to say something meaningful, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I just nodded and walked away. If signing the papers was hard, telling the kids was even harder. Emily and I sat them down together, trying to present a united front despite the obvious tension between us. "Nathan, Mia," Emily began, her voice gentle. "We need to talk to you about something important." I took a deep breath and picked up where she left off. "Mommy and I have decided that we're not going to be married anymore. But that doesn't change how much we love you or how much we'll always be here for you." Nathan's face crumpled almost immediately. "You're getting divorced?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Yes," Emily said softly, "but we're still going to work together to take care of you and make sure you're happy." Mia, who had been clinging to her stuffed bunny, burst into tears. "Why can't you just stay together?" she sobbed. Emily and I exchanged a pained glance. "Sometimes grown-ups decide they're better off as friends," Emily said, though we both knew that wasn't the truth. Nathan didn't say anything else, but the look on his face said it all. Betrayal, confusion, and sadness all rolled into one. It was heartbreaking. In the weeks following the finalization of the divorce, I felt like I was living in a fog. On the surface, life went on. Work, parenting, therapy sessions. But underneath, I was drowning. Every time I dropped the kids off at Emily's apartment, I was reminded of the life I used to have, now occupied by Stacey. I tried to focus on the positives. I still had a good relationship with the kids, and the divorce had at least given me a sense of closure. But moving on was easier said than done. I found myself replaying old arguments and moments of happiness in my mind, wondering where it had all gone wrong. Was it my fault? Could I have done something differently? Therapy helped me unpack some of those feelings, but the weight of regret was hard to shake. Despite the pain, I knew I couldn't stay stuck in the past forever. The divorce was a chance to start fresh, to figure out who I was outside of my role as Emily's husband. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I joined a support group for divorced dads, started focusing on my health, and even reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with over the years. It wasn't easy, but it was a step in the right direction. Through it all, one thing kept me going: my kids. I wanted to be the best father I could be, to show them that even when life doesn't go as planned, you can still find a way forward. The divorce was finalized in early spring, and while the paperwork provided closure, my emotional healing was a slow, uneven process. For months, I focused on the basics: work, parenting, and therapy, trying to rebuild a sense of normalcy. I wasn't looking for anything romantic. After what Emily put me through, I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready to trust again. Then I met Ashley. She wasn't someone I had expected to connect with. We met through a mutual friend at a backyard barbecue. Ashley was kind, funny, and refreshingly straightforward. She asked me about my kids, my job, and what I enjoyed doing for fun. For the first time in a long while, I felt like someone was genuinely interested in me. Not the broken, post-divorce version of myself, but the person underneath it all. At first, I was hesitant. I wasn't sure if I was ready to date, let alone introduce someone new into my kids' lives. But Ashley was patient. We started with casual coffee dates and long conversations, gradually building something that felt solid and real. When I finally told Emily I was seeing someone, her reaction caught me off guard. "So, you're dating now?" she asked one evening during a custody exchange, her tone laced with something that sounded like irritation. "Yes," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Her name is Ashley. She's great." Emily's eyes narrowed slightly. Well, I hope you're being careful about who you bring around the kids. It was rich coming from her, considering how quickly she had introduced Stacey into their lives. Of course I am, I said, forcing a polite smile. I think they'll like her when the time comes. She didn't say anything after that, but her expression was tight, her jaw clenched. Not long after I started dating Ashley, I noticed a shift in Emily. Her once bubbly mentions of Stacey became sparse, and the tension between them was palpable during drop-offs. At first, I chalked it up to the stress of co-parenting and the inevitable strain of being in a new relationship. Then, during one of our exchanges, Emily blurted out, "Stacey and I are taking a break." I blinked, surprised. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." She shrugged, but her face betrayed her frustration. "It's been tough. We just don't see things the same way anymore." I didn't press for details. It wasn't my place, and frankly, I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Still, there was a small, vindictive part of me that felt a sliver of satisfaction. Stacey, the woman Emily had left me for, wasn't the perfect match she had envisioned. As my relationship with Ashley grew stronger, Emily's behavior became increasingly erratic. She started asking more questions about Ashley, what she did for a living, how we met, what she was like. It was subtle at first, but over time, her jealousy became impossible to ignore. One evening, after dropping off the kids, Emily lingered at the door. "Do you really think Ashley is serious about you?" she asked, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. I raised an eyebrow. "Why wouldn't she be?" Emily shrugged. "I don't know. It just seems fast." I couldn't help but laugh. "Fast? You moved in with Stacey 3 months after you met her." Her face flushed, and for a moment, I thought she might snap back. But instead, she sighed and said, "I just don't want you to get hurt." It was almost laughable, her sudden concern for my well-being, but I chose not to engage. "Thanks for the advice, Emily," I said, shutting the door behind her. The news of Emily and Stacey's breakup came a few weeks later. Emily texted me out of the blue, asking if we could talk. When she arrived at the house, she looked drained, like she hadn't been sleeping well. "Stacey and I are done," she said, sitting at the kitchen table. "It just wasn't working." I nodded, unsure of what to say. "I'm sorry." She laughed bitterly. "Are you?" I met her gaze. "Yes. I know how hard it is to lose someone you care about." Emily stared at me for a moment, then looked down at her hands. "I thought I knew what I wanted," she admitted, "but I think I was wrong. About a lot of things." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if she was trying to tell me she regretted leaving. But if she expected me to offer her some kind of reassurance, I didn't have it in me. Ashley met the kids for the first time a few months later. It was a simple outing to the park, and while I was nervous, it couldn't have gone better. Nathan and Mia warmed up to her quickly, and by the end of the day, Nathan was asking when she could come over again. Seeing Ashley with my kids filled me with a kind of hope I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since my marriage ended, I could envision a future, one where I was happy, loved, and whole. Emily, meanwhile, seemed to be struggling. She would occasionally drop hints about how hard it was being single, how much she missed the stability of our life together. But those were her choices to live with, not mine. Looking back on everything that happened, I've realized that Emily's betrayal, as devastating as it was, forced me to grow in ways I never would have otherwise. It taught me to prioritize my own happiness, to set boundaries, and to never settle for less than I deserve. Ashley has shown me what a healthy, supportive relationship looks like. She respects me, loves my kids, and challenges me to be the best version of myself. As for Emily, I don't hate her anymore. I've accepted that people change, and sometimes that means letting go of what once was. We'll always share a bond through our kids, and for their sake, I hope we can continue to co-parent effectively. But now, I'm focused on the future. My future. Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Cheating Storytelling for more gripping real-life tales. Catch you in the next video.